On Saturday, the 7th of October, Hamas launched a military attack deep into the heart of Israel that shocked the world. As the day wore on, the extent of the breach of Israeli positions and the staggering losses became apparent. Hamas, it seemed, had managed to quite simply cross over the border and then capture over 20 settlements, military bases, and towns. Even the most seasoned Middle East commentators were stunned. Over the next few days, the news filled with articles about how the Israeli security services and military had failed. But what exactly was the failure? Let's look at the Israeli defenses. In previous conflicts, various Palestinian resistance groups had made use of tunnels to go under the main defense wall. To prevent this, Israel spent over $1 billion building an underground anti-tunnel barrier. Rather than deter an attack, this underground barrier made Hamas change their tactics. Rather than go under the border, they decided to go over it, around it by way of the sea, and straight through it. We have had no reports of even a single tunnel being used in the 7th of October attacks. Israel had also constructed a fortified wall along the entire border. This was completed in 2019, and the then Israeli defense minister called it a technological project of the first order, putting a wall of iron, sensors, and concrete between Hamas and Israel. He must have been very disappointed to see a regular bulldozer tearing down that wall. Israel had also invested in a range of high-tech defense projects, including automatic gun turrets and robot patrolling vehicles. All of these seem to have been overcome by low-budget drones, naval attacks with speedboats, and paragliders. There are also multiple military bases along the border. Despite what mainstream media might want us to believe, the main objective of Hamas fighters were these military bases, and the Israel military reported that at least 3 military bases were attacked: the Beit Hanun border crossing, the Zakim base, and the Gaza division headquarters at Reem. It seems that most of the soldiers in these bases were caught off guard and only knew of the attack when they heard gunfire. So, where was the failure? The automated turrets were working, the bases were manned, and the border wall and tunnel blocking steel wall were all working. If there was one failure by the Israelis, is what that they simply did not believe that the Palestinians were able to plan and coordinate such an attack. And this attack was very well planned. From drones in the air to coordinate their forces, to organized and well-trained personnel on the ground who had specific objectives and targets, and the weapons to meet those objectives. Israelis had made one critical mistake. They had concentrated all of their defenses into one defensive line. In Ukraine, the Russians had built 4 defensive lines, so that if one was breached, they could fall back to the second line and so on. The Israelis had no such plan, and once the main line of defense was breached, Hamas fighters had a clear, unobstructed line to their targets inside Israel. This was not the first time that Israel did not believe in the capabilities of the Arabs. Ironically, they made the same mistake in the 1973 war, almost exactly 50 years ago. They were given ample warning of the impending attack, including a direct confirmation of the attack by the Jordanians on the 25th of September. As in 2023, the Israelis simply did not believe that the Arabs had the ability to plan and stage an effective attack. In the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel fought against the combined armies of Syria and Egypt, and towards the end of that war against additional elements of the Iraqi and Jordanian army. In that war, the United States offered political support to Israel and airlifted substantial amounts of military supplies to them, but they did not deploy any of their own military. So why is it now that the United States has felt the need to send 2 carrier groups to the eastern Mediterranean? Surely Israel does not need US military assistance to defeat Hamas. Even if Hezbollah entered the war in a meaningful way, surely Israel can handle a combined Hamas-Hezbollah force which have no air power or armored divisions. What has changed from the 1973 war to the current conflict? In every conflict, Israel uses massive military force. They kill hundreds of enemy combatants and assassinate multiple leaders, as well as killing thousands of civilians. And each time, the Palestinian resistance emerges stronger and wiser. Israel has now stated that they want to eliminate Hamas completely. But there is no box in Gaza with Hamas written on it that they need to find and destroy. Hamas is not a physical object. Hamas embodies an ideological understanding amongst the Palestinians that they cannot rely on anyone to support their cause, and that they need to be prepared to fight and to take losses and endure suffering to gain their freedom. It's difficult to beat an enemy who refuses to be defeated. You can have the most advanced fighter jets in the world, the best tanks and missiles, but in the end, you can be beaten by a force that has far inferior military capabilities. They should have asked the United States about their humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan at the hands of the flip-flop wearing Taliban. In the 1973 war, Israel lost around 2,500 soldiers. That is a shockingly low number, bearing in mind that they fought against 4 Arab states. If we compare that to the casualty figures coming from Ukraine, we have to conclude that the wars in the Middle East were mere skirmishes. And this seems to stem not from Israel's amazing military capabilities, but the disastrous state of affairs amongst the Arab armies. Israel's Achilles heel is not in the failure of their security services or in the lack of weapons that their military has, but in the fact that their military success has relied almost entirely on the incompetence of its enemies. For 75 years, this has been the main reason why Israel has fared so well in war with its neighbors. This attack has ominous undertones for Israel, as it seems the Palestinians have woken up to the fact that an unbreakable resolve combined with long-term strategic planning and proper training can thwart the best of defenses.